am Dr.J. Vimalin Hena.
Start.
Hi everyone, I am Dr.J. Vimalin Hena, working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Microbiology, and the topic of discussion of this session is Microbial Metabolism. Microbes. What are these microbes? These microbes are small organisms which can be seen only through the microscope, and these microbes are very varied in nature. We have got vast subgroups of microbes, and among them there are basically two groups. One is the aerobes and the other one is anaerobes. Metabolism deals with the overall biochemical reaction that is occurring inside these microbes' body. Based on whether the organism is an aerobe or anaerobe, the process of metabolism varies. If ever you have thought of why we breathe in oxygen, the same way we have to think how this oxygen works inside the body. As we respire oxygen and we let out carbon dioxide, microbes also have the process in their mechanism where they can take in oxygen and they will be able to metabolize certain life processes. Metabolism, as already said, is the sum of all chemical reaction that is occurring inside the cell. And this metabolism is of two classes. One is catabolism and the other one is anabolism. Catabolism here is called as the breakdown process, where energy is broken down into energy is released by breaking some process. Anabolism is the building up process where the organism builds up one big compound from traces of compounds. For example, protein synthesis, which is occurring inside every bacteria, comes under this anabolic process. Catabolism, to give a small example, the glucose molecule which the organism takes in from the nutrient is broken down into pyruvate and ATP molecules are generated. These ATPs are nothing but the energy sources for the organism. So energy, when you see, it is often transferred from one state to another, where the reaction is called as oxidation and reduction. Always a molecule cannot stay in an oxidized state. It must be reduced. The oxidation is the removal of electrons. In all our system as well as in microbial system, these electrons are the driving force of life. Once when these electrons pass from one molecule to another, they are generating lot amount of ATP molecule, and if an organism is an aerobe, the final electron acceptor will be oxygen, whereby we will be getting water in the cell. And then these oxidation and reduction reactions always occur together, and most of the organisms oxidize carbohydrate as their primary source of energy. As already said, the simplest carbohydrate that an organism takes inside is glucose. Now moving on to the next one, called as the cellular respiration. We all are very clear with the respiration. Humans respire. We take in oxygen and we let out carbon dioxide. The same way, each and every cell, maybe either a prokaryote or an eukaryote, these microorganisms do have respiration process, and this respiration helps in the oxidation of glucose. This oxidation is nothing but the reduction of NAD to NADH, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. These are the electron carriers, and the cellular respiration process takes place in three stages. The one is glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. To be more brief, I can tell you a small example. Every morning we eat idlis, 4 or 5 idlis we eat along with some chutney or some sambar. So all those have got carbohydrate, proteins, lipids and fat. They all enter inside the stomach and they go through this process of glycolysis. Glycolysis is sugar breakdown, where in the idli we have got lot of carbohydrates which is broken down and you get energy to perform your daily routine. The same way, the organisms do have some nutrients to perform their life activities, and that first process is glycolysis, where glucose is oxidized to 2-pyruvic acid and then 2-NAD is reduced to NADH, and you produce 2 ATP molecule. This ATP is the energy molecule which is called as adenosine triphosphate, and this process occurs by substrate level phosphorylation. When you see this, the area where this process occurs is in the cytoplasm of both the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. Now moving on to the next, this is the preparatory step for Krebs cycle. All the metabolic products or all the substances which we eat, they enter into the final pathway of Krebs cycle. The same way, this is the central cycle for the organisms too. And here it has got two steps, and the first one is the preparatory step, where the pyruvic acid molecule which you have got from glycolysis is oxidized into acetyl-CoA. And then during oxidation process, the organism releases 2 molecules of NAD yielding 2 NADH molecules. And this step occurs in the mitochondria. That's why we always learn from our smaller classes that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That means it produces lot amount of ATP molecule. So these are the steps which are involved in the Krebs cycle, where there is oxidation of 1 acetyl-CoA molecule to carbon dioxide, and it produces 1 molecule of ATP, 3 NADH and 1 FADH molecule. Moving on to the next step, this occurs in the cytoplasm of the prokaryotes. And finally, coming on to the last part of our cellular respiration is your electron transport chain. This is also called as hydrogen transport chain, where the hydrogen molecules generated in the cell are transported from one electron carrier to another. That is nothing but jumping of one ball from one carrier to the another. See here, a series of electron carriers are present, where there is a series flow of electrons from one molecule to the other. During this flow, the oxidation reduction occurs. When a molecule catches a compound or catches an electron, it is said to be reduced, and when a molecule is in a state of giving it, it is said to be oxidized. So when you see, there are many molecules, FMN, cytochrome B, cytochrome C, and then finally, can you see the molecule oxygen, which we always breathe in, and even organism, aerobic microbes, they breathe in, and they finally produce water. This is what our oxygen does in the body too. The same occurs in the organisms also. Next slide please. And here, this occurs in the plasma membrane of prokaryotes and the inner mitochondrial membrane in eukaryotes. We too belong to eukaryotes, and this occurs in the mitochondria of each and every trillions of cells. The hydrogen gradient is built up in the mitochondria, and this is responsible for the production of ATP in the cell. ATP is nothing but the energy currency of the cell. Moving on to the next brief picture of the electron transport chain. You can see the series of electron carriers which are embedded in the plasma membrane, and then the final molecule of ATP which is being formed with the help of the enzyme ATP synthase. Now, production of ATP, here H plus ions are nothing but electrons. They pass through the ATP synthase, stimulating it to produce ATP from ADP. This is the ATP synthase complex where a molecule of ATP is being produced. Now, if an organism, this is the overall reaction showing the respiration process. Now, if an organism is an anaerobe, that means if it is not in need of oxygen, what does it do? It goes with carbon dioxide. It respires in carbon dioxide. It is very wonderful to see that this organism forms a group, one another group of process called as fermentation. Fermentation is again conversion of this glucose. The same nutrient it is using, but it is able to generate ATP molecule. So ATP yield, this is from prokaryotic respiration. The overall we get 38 ATP molecules in prokaryotes. And then fermentation, as earlier said, if an organism is not using oxygen, it will move on with the process of fermentation. Here it is clearly mentioned that fermentation does not use the Krebs cycle or the electron transport chain. Further, the NADH is used and it is reduced to pyruvic acid either to lactic acid or alcohol. This is where we microbiologists, we exploit the organisms in the industries and we produce lot of alcohols and acids. More acids we use in the food industries, enzymatic industries, even in the soap bars which we use, we exploit this particular step of the microbe and we are gaining lot of income. And NADH is converted back to NAD+. And further, this is the overall reaction of fermentation process, where again you get a molecule of formation of fermentation end product where there will be many different acids being formed. Thank you for listening to this talk. Thank you.